Welcome to Tales She Told Me, a podcast featuring honest conversation about what it means to be a woman, a mother, and in business. I'm your host, Farrah Haidar. Today, we will be discussing finding more joy in your life, and joining me is Jen Larimore. Jen is a mom of five, lawyer turned life coach, and host of the Mom First podcast. Jen is passionate about helping moms ditch the stress and lead with joy so that they can make the most of the season that they're in. Okay, Jennifer, so I don't tell this to many people, but I was originally going to name this podcast Reaching for Joy. And the reason is because I think the way we lead our lives today really doesn't leave much space for joy. My first name, also my formal first name, even though I go by Farrah, is Joy. So, and my Farrah means joy in Arabic. So I have a lot of connections to that word. And I find the way that sometimes we lead our lives today really sad because you can have all the things in the world, do all the do's, but you haven't got joy. And what does it matter, right? So let's start there. How do you think people get stuck in a joyless life?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Farrah. I think we get so focused on the day to day, on the grind, on the hustle of getting through the day. I think that especially happens for moms, especially working moms, moms who are out there trying to pursue a goal because they're so focused on the kids and trying to balance, quote unquote, what they have going on at work or professionally. And so when you're trying to show up in all those spaces, and a lot of us get hung up on perfectionism, a lot of us get hung up on guilt, a lot of us get hung up on anxiety, a lot of us get hung up on martyrdom. It doesn't leave very much room or space for joy. And I love that you were going to name your podcast that. And I can kind of see why we resonated so much with each other in that case, because I think if you begin with the premise that you should lead with joy or reach for joy, I think it can be a framework that you can build your life around. And if you do that, you'll have more joy in your life. Your life's not going to be perfect. Bad things are going to happen. The 50-50 of life is still going to be there. And you're going to be setting your life up through a paradigm or a framework where you're going to have some of those moments of joy that you want so badly too.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd love to hear when that realization first struck you. I'll share with you what first struck me. And it took me a long time, by the way, to unprogram myself. But I remember, I think it was my daughter's either 7th or 8th birthday, and she wanted a Moana themed birthday, right? And I had an unfinished basement at the time, and my perfectionism just kicked in. When I tell you, I decorated this basement, I got like 6-foot construction paper, covered all the walls with green construction paper, handmade. Now I'm a working mom. At the time the bakery was still very young. I was working like insane hours. I had a 3 or 4-year-old at the time, in addition to my daughter. I handmade luau flowers and did this arc. It was a 10-foot high, 8-foot wide arc with handmade Moana tissue flowers that I made, right? I put up balloons everywhere. I had all homemade food, a 20-foot slab. It was insanity. And the thing, like, I look back at it now, like, it was a great party. I mean, most people walked in and just went, wow, like, you did this. And I remember looking at it at that moment and going, I'm so tired, because I had stayed up all these nights doing all this stuff, right? I'm so tired. I'm not even sure I want to be here. And I said, there's something wrong with this picture. And that was my first aha moment, but I'd love to hear yours.
So when was that, Farrah? How long ago?
So my kid's 13 now, so we got years, 5-6 years.
And do you find that this is still something you're kind of like implementing or you're on a journey with? Or do you feel like that was the moment and for you it was sort of like a light switch type of moment?
It's not linear. Let me put it. I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah,
I,
my slip back moments.
yeah, I 100% can relate. I love the story you're sharing. I have a very similar story that I'll share with you too. But I would say, to answer your question, the time when I really realized something had to change was last fall. So I had a health issue in 2019, and I had found out at that point that I wasn't going to be able to have any more babies. And my husband and I, we really wanted a fifth. We didn't feel like our family was complete. We felt like somebody was missing. And in 2020, got pregnant, and we ended up having a beautiful baby girl. She's almost 2 now. And we had that, incredible exclamation point happen for our family, an incredibly happy time. I was doing great professionally. My husband's doing great professionally. We made it through COVID, the pandemic, as much as like anyone could during that time, without really like any big, huge losses. And we came out on the other side. Okay. We even purchased a lake home. And so we just were like living the dream. And in the fall of 2021, so last fall, I was in this funk where it was like, what is wrong here? Like, I was not having fun doing the things I normally did. Everything felt kind of like a drag, like a responsibility, like a chore, like even things that I loved all the time. I went to therapy. It was fine, but it didn't like get me out of this funk that I was in. And in the past, whenever I had been in something like that, I was always really sort of able to, pick up a new focus, or, jump into something new wholeheartedly. And nothing like that. Everything I tried, it wasn't working. And I realized that unless, like, I needed to find a way to get out of this, because I was missing this time with my kids. I was not enjoying it in the way that I wanted to. I was not having fun at work. I needed to find a way to do it. So I just started saying yes to whatever felt a little bit better. And what I realized by doing that is that I had to be the one to choose to really add more fun. And even beyond that, like more actual joy, like less focused on the problem at hand, less focused on, the chores that had to be done that day, but just really trying to do things through a lens of joy. And that for me is when I really realized that. But as you say, for you, it was not a linear process. It was not linear for me. I mean, I've kind of been on this journey for a long time with these various realizations that, hey, something I'm doing is not quite right. I'm not having fun. I'm not enjoying this time. But truly in the fall of 2021, that was where it really, really hit home for me. I had to really dig deep, and I had to realize that I had to pull myself out of this and move my life in a different direction, set my life up in a different direction. And that's where this idea of really following your joy, or having a call to joy in some way, really came into being and came into fruition with the kind of intent that it has now in my life. And it is like it's completely a journey. I am completely on a journey around this. And I wake up every day, and some days are better than others. And sometimes I'm like, I get frustrated or upset, and the whole day ends up kind of being shot. And other days I really am able to think about, like, how can I add some joy to my life? How can I be focused on what really matters? And for me, I know that at the end of the day, I want my children to be empowered to go after their dreams. I want my children to be happy in the sense of like joyful and grateful for all that they have in life. And I know that if I want that for them, I need to model it. And that's what keeps me going. And I would also just share that I love your story about the birthday, can completely relate. I have 5 children, right? So I've done a lot of birthdays. But guess what? Like my 6-year-old, he just turned 6. And usually this like kind of kindergarten level birthday is a really big deal at our house. We do a lot of birthday stuff. And this year with him, I was just so impressed and amazed by myself, right? Because I followed what he wanted. And I made it like not about me or not about my perfectionistic tendencies. I made it like, usually my firstborn, you're talking about the Moana theme. We did a Star Wars theme. I made a ginormous, okay, it was like 5 cake pans of a R2D2, which I hand decorated. I was working, by the way, I was working full time during this time with an hour commute and billable hours. So I had to get like a certain amount of hours in every week. We rented out this huge like facility for his entire, like all of his friends from daycare, school, everything. We had balloons. We made lightsabers out of foam noodles. My mom, like, we had a lot of fun doing this, but my mom made like little, like, kind of like little robes that they would wear. And my sister and I, we made like certificates and laminated them that they like completed like the birthday Jedi training. It was full on ridiculous. Okay. I loved it. I would totally do it. I'm so glad I got to do it. We love the pictures from it. He had an okay time. Right. But he would have been fine with anything. And so now my 6-year-old, I asked him what he wanted, and he said he just wanted to have a play date with 2 friends and make some pizza.
Yeah. And he'll remember that for life, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to remember the big, like, I actually asked my daughter the other day, she was like, oh yeah, didn't we do like, I don't you remember what? But so I have this theory about that, right? Like, I think it's multi-leveled in the sense that some of it is, for me, I should say for me, this is my experience. Some of it is maybe fear of judgment, appearances, that. But one thing I found in my recovery is I think, we're so used to, we run such a tight ship, right? Like, especially in the States, I'm, my family's originally Lebanese, so it's a little bit different there, but especially in the States, we don't have tribes. There is no fallback plan, kid gets sick, you are it. There's, for me, at least, there was no family to really be able to help out. No one was available. So we run such a tight ship, and that requires sometimes military precision, right? And joy is unpredictable and messy. And suddenly you're just like, I don't know, man, you're messing with my plan, right? So I think some of it, but what happens when we plan out everything so exactly is there's really no room for life to surprise us.
Right. Right. There's no room for any fun either a lot of the time. Usually we don't schedule the fun in there.
Because that feels like wrong.
Yeah. Right. It feels very like wasteful almost.
Yeah. It does. It's
inefficient.
Have you've heard of Julia Cameron, right? And the writer.
Yeah.
So what's the thing? One of the things she asked you to do, she asked you to take an artist date. And this is part of my recommendation too, right? 2 hours a week where you just go play. It can't be productive. That's one of the things. It can't be productive. It can't be like, I'm going to play by taking a writing class, right? Like, no, it can't be productive. It's pure play.
Yeah.
And I was like, out of all the things she asked me to do, that was what I struggled with most. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Really.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked a little bit about maybe how it comes to be, how much does mindset play a part in reaching for joy?
So this is kind of a layered question too, I would say, right? Because it depends kind of on how you define mindset. And I would say that it would be very difficult if you have like a certain rigidity or negativity within your mindset to full on adopt like a practice of joy into your life. I think you'd have a lot of barriers, and I think you might have to start a little bit smaller. Mm-hmm. And maybe you have to start by working on some of those other pieces. Or maybe you just, instead of going for 2 hours of fun a week, right? Maybe you're like, okay, for 5 minutes today, I'm just gonna like do something that is like fun or joyful to me. And you know what? I think at a certain point too, sometimes people lose sight. They don't even know what is fun or joyful to them. I think I was there last fall, like where I was like, nothing is lighting me up. Like, I don't know of anything that would. So I think sometimes when you're in that space, I think you have to ask yourself, am I in need of help from outside of myself? Am I in need of therapy? a meeting with a psychologist or psychiatrist to evaluate what's going on. I might need a coach, someone who can, help me with my mindset or hold me accountable in some way. But I think for the vast majority of folks, I think starting from a mindset of, being gratitude and starting from a mindset of having gratefulness and starting from a mindset of being open to the possibility of adding joy to your life, having some curiosity, I think will take most people a really long way down this path.
So give me an example. Like, where did you start when you first realized this?
So for me, I was just very determined that this was not going to be how I showed up in my life. And if there weren't going to be other people around that could help me, so I didn't at the time think that my therapist was helping me. I can tell you, looking back, like she completely helped me, right? Because she got me to just like really step into the power that I had and figure out some things and make some changes. So she did help me. At the time, I was just not in a place where I could see that. And now I can see it. And so I think if you have a mindset, like if you're in a place where you can be open to the idea of, hey, maybe I could have more fun and maybe that would help. Maybe I could look to add some intentional joy to my life each day from a place of, again, just having fun and being open to some joy as opposed to making it a chore. And if you're in that place, if you can kind of get there, I think that can be a really useful first step.
Yeah. And it could be something as small as like turning the music on while you cook, right?
Exactly. It can be, I think, just reframing situations. So, a lot of the times, there are a lot of chores that we end up doing, especially if we identify as the mom in the home, as the primary caretaker. Even if we work outside of the home, I think there are a lot of chores that we end up identifying where we're like, okay, we just got to get through all these chores. And the chore list is so long that really there's no space or time for joy. And so if you could just ask yourself, okay, if I do have to actually do this thing, first of all, do I have to do all those things? But if I do actually have to do them, is there any way to make it more fun? And so if you can ask your brain some of those kinds of questions, like sometimes fun's not the right word. Like I like to think of it as like, is there anything that would make this a little bit more magical? A lot of the times at our house, it's like lighting a candle. So we'll do a picnic lunch in the living room with a blanket, and we'll set a lit candle on the coffee table. And suddenly, like that really transforms it from not just like a lunch of like, say it's like cheese and crackers or goldfish and some fruit and veggies, like a really like small lunch. It transforms that into something else. So I like the question of like, is there any way I can make this more magical? And again, not coming from a place of obligation. We don't have a need or obligation. It's not necessary to make every moment for our kids or for us magical or special. It's just this idea of like, can it be a little bit different? Can it be more fun? Can it feel less of a chore? People have to find the language that is going to work best for them and their brain. But once you can find the question that you can ask yourself, so like I said, for me, can I add a little bit more magic to this in any way? What would make this fun? What would make this moment less stressful? Is there anything I could do with my kids in this moment to make it more fun? So I don't like to pack the lunches for school. So if I am going to do that, I want my kids to do it with me. And I want it to be a chance for us to like kind of chat and bond in that way and talk. And so for me, having that moment of connection really helps. I think another thing that you can do is like think about like in a particular space, say a morning routine, for example, what would you need to have in that morning routine at a very high level in order for it to feel fulfilling for you? For me, it's 10 minutes of yoga and some connection time with my kids are like the two primary things that I need in my morning routine to get to work feeling less frazzled and frantic, less sort of in that frenzied state. So even if I'm running late, even if things go wrong, even if we can't find our shoes in the morning, what are some of those things that you need? I think if you start at a high level and kind of get like, what is the feeling that I need to be feeling, then you can use your curiosity, your creativity to ask yourself, all right, if I need to feel, for example, more connection in the morning, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And then you can build that in. So it's really, honestly, it's about being open to setting your life up in an intentional fashion instead of living on default. That really is what it is. Setting it, having a life on your terms instead of on the default terms that your circumstances throw at you.
Now, would you say though that like, I'll give you an example. Would you say that this, I'm figuring out the best way to phrase this, but there are some times when we don't have control. Like, so you talked a little about obligation. I'm going to phrase this in a different way. You talked a little bit about obligation. And one of the things I feel very obliged to do, even though I've started to hate it, is make dinner because my husband's not a chef. We have a lot of allergies in the family. Somebody has to make dinner. We're hungry, right? But what I said is like, I'm like, okay, I kind of like in that intentional way. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So I started looking at meal services and stuff like that. That didn't work well. You know, they weren't really happy. I wasn't super happy with it. And then I just said, you know what? I think it's just the amount of time I spent. Like you kind of identify what the problem is. So I ended up saying, okay, I'll make dinner. So I'm going to do this thing that I'm maybe not really happy doing. I'm going to try and make it fun with music and stuff like that, but I'm also going to limit it. I'm going to say, I'm never going to make a dinner that takes me more than 20 or 30 minutes to make. Simple it is. We're done. You want a special meal, bud? My son actually came to me the other day, like, can we have homemade ravioli? I'm like, if you say do it with me, I'll make you homemade ravioli. I'm not spending 2 hours making you homemade ravioli. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess the question is like, what do you advise for someone who, like, you have a task that you have to do, you may hate it, but you have to do it.
Yeah, I think there are so many tasks if you're a mom or that primary caretaker where it feels like that. And I think begin by observing that you have a choice.
Mhm.
You don't have to do it. You don't have to make the dinner. You don't have to fold the laundry. You don't even have to go to work tomorrow. Like you don't have to. And in fact, you don't even have to take care of your kids. Like you could choose today to just like not take care of them. That wouldn't feel good to you. That's not what you want. And so you do actually want to make the dinner. Like I use this for myself on laundry a lot. Like laundry is so frustrating because it's like the minute, like we have a family of 7.
Endless.
It's endless. The minute you get it all folded, there is like an entire hamper ready to go again. And so for me, like I reframe it and I remind myself, like, actually, like I do want this laundry. I might not want to spend time folding it. But I do want this laundry to be in my house. And so that helps drop me into a space of gratitude and knowing that this is something that I've chosen, like we've chosen this really intentionally, and I want this. And then I think it's doing some of the things that you mentioned, Farrah, right? Thinking about, okay, can I set any kind of boundary around this? The laundry doesn't need to be folded perfectly at my house. So my kids help me fold it. One of my kids, that's like their primary chore each week is to fold the laundry. And there's a lot of it. And so it's their primary chore. I let them do it on their terms. I would love it if they would choose to not fold it in my bedroom, but they are folding it in my bedroom. I do like let them do it on their terms. So I think if you can establish some boundaries and limits around it. So if there is any way to delegate it, do that, like the meal planning, right? Or the meal services, like you mentioned. If there is any way to limit it, like putting a boundary around it. And then just understanding like there are going to be things like that they may not be as fun as you hope. Like I'm not so Pollyanna-ish that I can tell you like all the things that are not fun are fun. Like my husband doesn't enjoy fixing, like doing any of the plumbing stuff, right? He doesn't enjoy that. He's never going to enjoy it. It's never going to bring him joy. And he doesn't put the pressure on himself to try to make it joyful. And I don't want us to do that either, right? I don't want to try to like make laundry fun. And I want to be open to the possibility that maybe I do want this laundry on some level. And maybe it doesn't have to be like a burden either. So I try to explore like some of those options, like, keeping in mind that I want it, scheduling it in some way, delegating in some way, limiting it in some way, or like adding another component to it. A lot of these kinds of chores, like you can add something, podcasting, listening to podcasts, listening to music during them. It sounds like those are things that you've already tried. And I think those are great starts. If you do all that and you're still just like, oh, this is the worst, then I would say, I wonder if you could look at other parts of your day or of your week. And I wonder if maybe this is so hard because you're just not making time in other ways for fun or joy or for the things that light you up. Because I know that if you can do all of this already, like it's not just about like trying to make this one task fun or joyful, but maybe it needs to be a situation where you look at your life more holistically.
Speaking of that, looking at your life more holistically, and you brought up something before about empowerment, right? That you don't have to do it. To me, that's half the magic right there, right? I think part of the resentment and anger comes from feeling like you don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the mom, I have to do all this, and all of you are in my life. You get that anger feeling. So I think that just being able to say no sometimes, or say, you know what, it's okay not being perfect, or it's okay. You know what, I had, like, for example, I hang all my t-shirts. I don't fold them anymore. It takes too long. I put them on hangers.
Yeah.
It's easier for me to sort through them. I can see them. Perfect. Right. So half of that, I think, is coming from just being able to say it doesn't have to be a specific way. Right. And I can know. And I think that sometimes I don't know if you'd agree, we expect things from ourselves that no one else is expecting from us.
Oh yeah. Or they don't even want. They don't even care. They don't even want it. I think too, like we get an idea of in our head of like how a good mom or a good wife or a good woman, a good person would do something. And it doesn't have to be done that way. There may be like scientifically or technically a perfect way to fold a towel, and your towels do not have to be folded perfectly. I love how you kind of just allowed yourself to find a solution with regard to t-shirts that was actually really going to work for you and be less of a chore. And that is it. But if you were to go on Pinterest and you were to see like all the ways that you perfectly folding the t-shirt, then you might be inclined more to try to do it in that way, or somebody might be inclined to try to do it in that way. So find what works for you and just release the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have the folding t-shirt contraption.
Yeah.
In my laundry room, untouched, because I don't want to sit there and do that anymore. I even got the kid one. Like, I have two sides.
You're like, we're gonna have these perfectly folded t-shirts. Everyone will be like perfectly square. And then it's so, I don't know about you, but like when I open their drawers after I have folded all their t-shirts perfectly, and it lasts for like a day, and then it's just like, and it's like the drawer has vomited everywhere and there's t-shirts everywhere. It's so frustrating.
And then you're like, and then you remind yourself, they're really young.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to kind of touch base on is, I have like two or three things, but one of the things is that mom being the root, like one of the things I picked up, I always, and I don't know about you, but I never really connected my own happiness with my family's overall happiness. I always thought it was kind of like separate things. But one of the things I've noticed through this journey is the happier I am, the happier everyone around me seems. Right? Would you agree with that? And have you seen examples of that? Or
yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's part of, the idea I have for how I want to structure my life to be an example for my kids. I know that if I am in a good place, that they might not necessarily be, but I know that it's a lot more likely that they're going to be. And I know for sure that if I am frustrated and having a bad day and having a hard time, my kids are going to fall into that same space. that it's going to be really hard for them to not be in that space, because we're the leaders in our families. We really are. And I think it's up to us to really take that on with intentionality in the way that we take on so many other things. And if we put our focus there, we'll be doing a service for ourselves, but also really truly for our kids.
Yeah. One of the things I hear thrown around a lot is gratitude, right?
Mm.
You should be grateful you have this beautiful house. You should be grateful your kids are happy. You should be grateful. You should be grateful. You should be grateful. And I spent a lot of time kind of banging my head over with gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for me, it's like, how do you embrace the joy without falling into this trap of toxic positivity, where I should be grateful, I should be grateful, I shouldn't complain. But when you don't complain, then nothing gets fixed. Right?
Right. Including things that aren't working for you in your life.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important distinction to draw between what is trying to focus on and adding joy to your life and focusing on having good vibes only or positivity only. Because what we don't want to do is in any way push down or repel a feeling that is there within our body. And so we want to acknowledge the feelings that we have, the emotions that we have, and we want to be gentle with ourselves with those things. So it's really important to me as I move forward in this journey and in this message of putting out to people that I really am finding it helpful for me to lead with joy. And I think you might too. And I would love for you to come with me on this journey. It is so important to me that people not interpret that as like, oh, then I can only feel joy, or if I'm not feeling joy, it's wrong in some way. I struggled with the same thing, Farrah, around gratitude, whereas like I was like, oh my gosh, I should just be grateful that I have 4 healthy children. Who am I to ask for a 5th? That is, so unreasonable. And why am I even questioning the universe or God in this diagnosis that I have? Who am I to not be happy at a job that, at the time was, definitely paying the bills and had flexibility, and I just was not fulfilled at it? Like, who am I to not be appreciative of those things? But I think the rub comes in is that we can be grateful for something in its form, and we can still want it to change. Both things can be true. So I can be grateful for my 4 healthy children, and I can know in my heart that there is a 5th baby that's waiting to be added to our family, and I can pursue that. I can be grateful for the laundry, and I can still just be like, oh, if I could hire someone to do my laundry, that'd be awesome. Right? I can have both things can be true. And I think if we can allow ourselves the space to know, like on a day when we are really frustrated and having a hard time, that it's okay. Nothing has gone wrong. Nothing is wrong with us for that. And we can still attempt to find a way to turn the page on that day. We can attempt to live into the next moment with intentionality. We can be responsible for the energy that we're bringing to our home and to our family and our attitude. We can do those things, even if not everything else is perfect.
Yeah, I agree. I think we don't talk about it enough, that sometimes when I talk to women, we don't talk about this aspect enough. I call it dancing with our darkness, which is just, dancing with the shadow and the dark feelings that you have. I think in general, American culture is very positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what is something, if you have someone out there that's struggling right now, right? What is the one thing you would tell them?
I would just want them to know, first and foremost, that they aren't alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of us struggle at different times in our lives, and it doesn't mean necessarily that anything is wrong with them or that anything has gone wrong in their life. I would encourage them to get help. I would encourage them to try a lot of different things, and help can look different for everybody. Sometimes the kind of help that's needed is professional licensed help from a therapist of some kind for your mental health. Sometimes that's needed. Sometimes help can look like life coaching. Sometimes help can look like, telling your partner or telling your friends about what's going on. Help can take all of those different forms. So I would want them to know that they're not alone, that it's okay to get help. And I would really encourage them to give themselves just a lot of grace. Because when you're in that space, it can feel like there's not a way out. And it's hard at those moments to trust that there could be, or to have faith that there might be. And I think if you can just give yourself some grace and some time, you'll get to the other side of it. But not if you're beating yourself up, not if you're feeling like nobody else has gone through this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Jennifer, I have this question, and it's uniquely suited for you. I ask it for every single person that comes on the podcast. And it is, what is a weird habit or ritual you have that makes your life more joyful?
Great question. I love it, obviously. So my thing in the morning is that I really do need that space of connection with my kids. I want to leave them in a good place. On the days when I do the drop off in the morning, one of our traditions is to ask a couple of questions, but also to let kids play a particular song that they love. And so lately, it is Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball. And so we put that on. One of my big kids runs the phone, over the Bluetooth, and we put that on, and we have like a little mini dance party and song fest on the way to school. And what I love about this song in particular is that when the lyrics are, I came in like a wrecking ball, we all scream, sing at the top of our lungs. And it's honestly, it's so fun. It's so fun and it's so easy. It doesn't cost us anything. We're in the car. It doesn't cost money or time or anything. And it's just a way in which I feel connected to them. I hope that they feel connected to me and to each other. And it's really fun.
Yeah. And I bet you everyone loves you in the carpool way. Because I want to carpool with them.
I think they're probably just like, oh, they're the Larimores again. We're kind of that family sometimes.
That's okay.
It is. It's okay.
Yeah. So Jen, it was a pleasure having you. And if any of you out there would like to hear more from Jen, you can check out her podcast, Mom First, available on any podcast site, or reach her at momfirstcoaching.com. All links in the show notes below. As always, I'd love to hear from you about this episode. How do you reach for joy in your life? Hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Farrah Haidar. Also, I'm giving away a PDF of some of the best quotes we've had on the show, beautifully designed to print and journal your thoughts. Email me at farrah@farrahhaidar.com and title it Quotes. Talk to you soon. Till then, chase your happy.